And with that, we welcome you back here to Sports Talk, coming your way on a Monday afternoon. Wow, 4th of November already. Where has the time gone? Where has the time gone? Unbelievable. Along with Adrian Broadus, I'm Steve Kaplowitz, coming your way right here, 600 ESPN El Paso. 505-6009, that's our telephone number to get into the program, 505-6009. So much to talk about. Where do we start? Do we start with UTEP basketball tonight? Do we start with football from Saturday? Do we start with the Cowboys losing not just their game, but losing Dak for weeks? CeeDee Lamb apparently is not as injured as we thought. But that season is just about done too. I mean, Adrian, there are so many ways we can go, including the NFL's trade deadline tomorrow at 2 o'clock. Hey, by the way, did the NFL decide that they wanted to get some of the headlines themselves and not just the presidential election tomorrow, and decide they wanted to make the deadline on the 5th of November?
Well, I was going to say, the only other thing that would have overtaken the trade deadline was Mike McCarthy getting fired from the Dallas Cowboys. And maybe that could still be in play, Steve. Maybe he doesn't even make this weekend against the Eagles.
Maybe. I don't know, man. It's just it's been a crazy season so far for the Dallas Cowboys and their fans. I mean, they've lost 3 in a row. They're 3-5. Washington just keeps on winning, making it look easy in the process. They really do. They've got a terrific young quarterback. By the way, is that what's going to make this even worse for Dallas Cowboys fans? Seeing what Jaden Daniels is doing, and while that's happening, realizing that they are stuck with Dak for 4 more years after this year at $60 million per.
Yeah, I don't know, man. This is I think the messes with this team started last offseason when they decided to just run it back. I keep saying this, and I'm just going to say it again. I don't think, since nothing changed, since you had all these issues with Zeke off the field, when you had Dak go out of this game, they were out of this game, Steve, and then they come back in during garbage time to make all these scores look close. Last week didn't feel close to me. Yesterday didn't feel close to me. The Atlanta Falcons dominated that game yesterday, and if I'm a Cowboys fan today, I'm disgraced. I'm just so disappointed with this team right now and disgusted that I'm ready to turn the page on next year and see who my coach would be for 2025.
Well, regardless of who your head coach is going to be, you already know your quarterback, right? You know your quarterback is going to be Dak. I mean, that's the one thing I'll say, okay? He said he's never felt a hamstring injury like this, right? But you have to realize something, and that is the Cowboys will be staying with Dak for the foreseeable future. Because you remember this too, okay? Of that 4 years, $240 million contract that he signed, that deal includes $231 million in guaranteed money. Jerry's not going to eat that deal. So this is now Dak's team for 4 more years after this year. So, however they decide to run it back as far as coach goes and personnel, they're going to have to do it with a guy that's making $60 million.
Yeah, and it's really just next year. Like next year's cap hit, Steve, 32% of the cap hit across the Dallas Cowboys is what Dak Prescott could be owed all the way up next season. So, and that's crazy.
Could be owed. Wait, hang on. Let's slow it down. You said could be owed. He's going to be owed that. Can you imagine if Jerry took a $230 million hit to try to get rid of Dak Prescott?
Well, I'm just going to say, I'd say this. I'm not ruling out the outside possibility of a trade. I don't think that's a shot. I don't think that's I'm just saying it's a long shot possibility. Teams need quarterbacks out there, Steve. There's a lot of really bad teams without a quarterback whatsoever. And say what you want about Dak, at least he's a stable quarterback, and outside of this injury, he's usually pretty durable.
I'm looking at the Dallas Cowboys cap hits over the next 4 seasons on SpotTrack.com. And I mean, next year, the cap hit is $89 million, okay? That's not even, There's nothing they can do. I mean, $89 million next year, $68 million in 26, $62 million in 2027, and then $72 million in 2028.
Oh,
and
man,
by
that's
then,
terrible.
Dak is 35 years. This is the worst deal ever. Ever. If you thought it was bad before, this is just, I mean, and I don't know. I can't even begin to fathom what Dallas Cowboys fans are going through. Knowing that Dak's going to get $231 million total guaranteed and is not going to be an unrestricted free agent until he's 36 years old. And worse, that because of the amount of money he's making, the Cowboys will not have much flexibility to build a team around him. How do you win like that? How do you win like that if you're the Cowboys? I guess the answer is you don't, right?
Well, and he's also you've already seen it, right? You've seen it at the playoffs level. You've seen it there. So if you're asking fans to bank on a 33, 34-year-old Dak, I mean, forget what he's going to do this year or next year. The tail end of this contract right here scares me more than just these next two seasons. Like, they have CD under wraps. They're going to have Micah Parsons at least for next season and probably for the future beyond that. But, just for right now, there's no competitive nature where I could see this team winning a Super Bowl this year or next. And then the 2 years after that, that's supposed to be the years after his prime. I'm worried about that for that Dak deal.
I'd just be worried, period. You know what? If I am a Cowboys fan, it just doesn't look promising at all. At all. There's nothing promising about this particular situation. So, yeah, I'm with you. All right. Hey, we're hanging with you live at Border City Alehouse, 1506 Lee Trevino. Happy hour is here, folks. Happy hour is here at the Alehouse. And you know what happy hour means? Happy hour means $4 22-ounce domestic drafts, $4 Hornitos and Tito's, and $4 Fireball. That's what it means. There's a lot of great deals happening here at happy hour at El Paso's premier sports bar and grill. It's Border City Alehouse, the home of Sports Talk Live on Mondays. So, yeah, I mean, Cowboys, God, I don't know what to expect from Cowboys fans today. Probably no calls because what can you say as a Cowboys fan? They're 3-5. The $240 million man's going to be out a few weeks. They're going nowhere, and it is just maybe the good news is I got to try to find a silver lining. The silver lining is normally this time of year they're 7-1 or 6-2. And everybody's thinking playoffs and big run and this is the year. Maybe it's nice to know after 9 weeks of the NFL season that you don't have to worry about January. Maybe there's something to that. You don't even have to worry about January disappointment because you're already dealing with disappointment in November. So, I mean, that could be the ultimate, the way to look at this thing if you're a Cowboys fan. But, yeah, it's rough. And then to see what Washington is doing with Jaden Daniels, and, Philly's Philly. So they almost lost yesterday, but they found a way to win. So they're now 6-2, and they've won 4 in a row. Meanwhile, the Cowboys and the Giants are bringing up the rear of the NFC East. That's what they're doing. While the Commanders and Eagles are clearly the best two teams in that division, and it's not even close. And then you look at the rest of the NFC, and other than a very average NFC West, you've got the Falcons 6-3 in the South after beating the Cowboys, leading that division. Bucks are playing tonight against the Chiefs. That's a tough game for them. Bucks are 4-4, Chiefs are 7-0. And then you've got in the NFC North, you've got the Lions, Vikings, and Packers all 7-1, 6-2, and 6-3 respectively. Bears are 4-4. And, the Cowboys just, what are you going to say? What can you say if you're a Cowboys fan? Maybe Luis can give us some answers. He'll be joining us next as we continue 12 past the hour here on Sports Talk. Luis, how are you?
Let me do it. Let me do it. That's all. What's left, man? You know, they're going to lose everything, all the games. Let's get a good draft. let's get a good player, man. I told you, and I'll say it again. As long as Jerry Jones is a honcho, the owner, Meathead Jones,
Yes.
there's no way that the Cowboys will ever reach the Super Bowl. Done. Finito. Ciao. Ciao. They're gone. They're history. You know what? They should fire everybody, starting with Meatloaf McCartney.
You know what? I mean, he's probably going to be gone. You got to figure that's happening. So, yeah, you're right. That's a good point. Good way to look at things. You know, just start rebuilding. Start going from there. Maybe you'll get lucky. Maybe you'll find a way to get Quinn Ewers. Maybe that can happen. So, you know, or go get, you know what do you need a quarterback for? You've already got Dak for 4 more years. Go get Ashton Jeanty, the running back from the Boise State Broncos. That might be the way to go. Maybe, maybe there's your answer. You got to get a good young running back and someone that can handle the load, and maybe he'll be, normally running backs do not go in the top 10, but when you're the Dallas Cowboys and you know you need one, you might just have to make the exception and try to grab the best one on the board. So maybe that's the that's the area they decide to go. And you're right, stink it up, get a good pick, and make sure you address a big need. That's actually not a bad idea. Not a bad idea at all.
Well, Steve, isn't it interesting that the last running back that the Cowboys drafted pretty high ends up being Ezekiel Elliott, 2016, not too far from right now. He was drafted 4th overall, which is crazy to think about. And look at where he's at. I mean, the lifespan of running backs isn't that much, so do you waste that first-round draft pick if it's high for Dallas? Which, by the way, there are 9 teams in the NFL through week 9 who have only won 2 games. So it's just going to be interesting where the Cowboys end up falling here when it's all said and done.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, if you were, let's put it this way. If you right now were the Cowboys and you were in that situation, what would you look to be doing?
I'd go quarterback. I look at Jaden Daniels. He's a prime example. It doesn't have to be the top overall guy. Like if it's Shador who's the number 1 or whatever, you just have to hope that you get the right guy. And I feel like Washington has a guy, and I feel like that is the assurance that you need if you're a program to look to give some hope or give some life into your organization in the future. I get it. You have Dak under contract for a while, but you won't have to pay that new quarterback until after you're done paying Dak.
So what you're saying is, you get a young quarterback, you groom him for 4 years, and then, well, I'm just saying, what do you do? I mean, how do you dump that? In other words, if they didn't give the kind of money to Dak and they could just let him walk away, then it's the perfect scenario for everything you're describing. But they just gave the guy $60 million a year for 4 years after this season. And you're never going to move that contract. Nobody's going to take that deal. Nobody. So you screwed yourself, Adrian. You did. So now, they don't have a running back. Go get the best running back in the game. Maybe go in that direction. Maybe wait a couple years for quarterback. Because, you know what? Wouldn't it be terrible if you get somebody and then you develop him for 3 or 4 years, he never starts unless Dak gets hurt. And then by the time Dak is ready to walk and you finally get out of that crazy contract, then you got to spend $25-30 million for the guy you just drafted. That's going to be your future quarterback.
Well, but
wait a while on that.
Nah, but you wouldn't be in that situation. You'd probably put that new quarterback, that new shiny object in, even if you're paying Dak the big bucks. Look at what Atlanta's willing to do. They broke the bank on Kirk Cousins, and they drafted Michael Penix 8th. And they're not even going to play Penix this year. He's just riding the bench, learning from behind. That could be a quarterback behind the scenes with the Cowboys. Trey Lance, it's obvious that they don't want to commit to his development. They would have thrown him in yesterday. Cooper Rush didn't give you anything if you're the Cowboys. So if I'm going into these next 2 weeks, they don't even have a backup. So even for a backup's sake, you probably look at just drafting a quarterback just to draft one and see if you get something down the road. That's how Dak became Dak. Yeah. He was just this, he's just going to be a backup to Tony Romo, and then he became the guy. But
you don't have to spend a first-round pick on a quarterback. Go get one in the 4th round or 5th round.
Could be the case. Yeah, could be the case.
I mean, I wouldn't. I would not waste a first-round pick on someone that I know is years away from starting. Years. Because Jerry will never just pay Dak off just to get out of that deal. He won't do it. You know, fans wish he would. I don't blame him. Because, I think everybody would wish that would be the case. But no, it's a rough spot right now. They're in a really, really rough spot because of their owner. Just what it comes down to. Who was afraid. He was afraid of losing Dak. So what did he do? He gave him the money, and now look at the results. 3-5, and you got him for 4 more years. Oh, my God. This is it's not a good day for a Cowboys. Not a good day to be a Cowboys fan. Really isn't. All right, 18 past. Just getting going here on the program. 505-6009, 505-6009. We got so much to talk about today. Live out here at Border City Alehouse, 1506 Lee Trevino. But let's go to Charlie 1, who's standing by with this traffic update. Boys could use a running back. Could Ashton Genty be the answer from Boise State? One of the questions we're throwing out there right now, since it looks like the Cowboys could very well be a top 10 pick in the NFL draft. Could they go receivers and more options in the passing game opposite CeeDee Lamb? That could also be a possibility. But the idea of Quinn Ewers, Carson Beck, Jalen Milroe, Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders to Dallas, probably not happening because, those guys could all be gone before the Cowboys pick, number one. And number two, with all the issues the Cowboys have, does drafting a quarterback when you've got to pay somebody $240 million over the next 4 years make any sense? And I know what Adrian's saying, and man, in a perfect world, if you could dump Dak, that'd be great. But let's also look at it this way, Adrian. If they wanted to dump Dak, they just wouldn't have re-signed him. They would have let him play out the season and then let him go. And then he could have walked and they could have started fresh and go get themselves a quarterback. But you know what? They were worried about the prospect of a rebuild. They didn't want to take a chance like the Commanders took with Jaden Daniels or like the Denver Broncos are taking with Bo Nix or the Chicago Bears are taking with Caleb Williams. I mean, they don't want to risk that. They were afraid of that. So what do? They take their guy that has taken them to the playoffs over the years and been one of the better regular season quarterbacks over the last 7-8 seasons, and they gave him the money because they did not want to deal with a full rebuild, not knowing they would be 3-5, and that quarterback would now injure himself and be out a couple of weeks, and by the time he gets back, they could be 3-9 for all we know.
Yeah, I feel like just the re-signing of Dak is telling everybody that your floor, no matter what, is going to be mediocre. And that's what the floor is right here for the Cowboys. They're just this mediocre, subpar team that's they're going to beat up on all the bad teams out there. There's a lot of really bad teams in the NFL, and the Cowboys, they won't beat anybody of substance, of quality in this league, just the way it stands right now and the way that they're built. So if they end up here's my argument for getting a quarterback. You see the Kansas City Chiefs deal with a lot of mediocrity before Patrick Mahomes. It was with Alex Smith, and they let Patrick Mahomes sit behind Alex Smith as he was developing as a quarterback, something that Bo Nix wasn't able to do here this season with Denver, something that Jaden Daniels didn't do with Washington, something that Caleb Williams isn't doing with Chicago, but it's learning behind the guy and then maybe being thrust into the mix in year 2 or 3. And I don't know if that's even going to work because you're also having to say that you draft the guy who's going to actually be the franchise-changing quarterback. I think that's really hard to do in today's game of football.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, look, I looked at Alex Smith's contract too while he was playing for the Chiefs, and they renegotiated that deal, and when they traded him to Washington at the time, he had a 4-year contract and was making like $94 million, so like $23.5 million a year, and that was only 6 years ago. So can you imagine, they dealt him with a $23.5 million average per year value, whereas now with Dak, almost multiply that by 3. And that's what you're dealing with right now.
Yeah, but at the same time, I mean, the quarterback contracts have skyrocketed. We both know that. Like even if it's just 6 years from then. The fact that contract was tradable, though, that tells you that it could happen. Even though how scary this one looks right here for Dak, the cap hit next year is impossible. That one feels like there's no way. That's 32% of your team's cap hit on any given team. But the year after that, maybe you start to get into better deals or deals that a team could talk themselves into if they have no quarterback and they just need somebody to be stable back there.
Now, I'm telling you, we'll have to talk more about that with you right now, folks. It's 505-6009, our telephone number, 505-6009. Let's go right back to it. Eddie's next in Fort Bliss. Eddie, how are you?
You know, Steve, it's a great day to be a Cowboys fan. I mean, look at Derrick Henry. He's having a great season. Oh, wait, too soon?
No, there's another one. There's another one. And according to Jerry, the Cowboys couldn't offer Derrick Henry because they had no money because of Dak's original contract before they even renegotiated it. So, yeah, it's a conundrum.
Here's what I don't understand. Ravens are in salary cap jail pretty much every season. They found a way to move it around so they could give $6 million this year and $6 million next year. And look at it already. Henry's already over 1,000 yards, has was 11 or 12 total touchdowns, and 9 of them are rushing. You can't tell me you don't want that 70 or 80 points extra for the Cowboys.
How do you know if Derrick Henry was on the Cowboys, he would be doing what he's doing now in his situation, with Baltimore? You don't. It's another thing.
You don't, but hey,
it's like
look at it this way.
It's like saying if Saquon Barkley stayed with the Giants, he would be having to cut. No, he wouldn't. He'd probably be injured, and who knows if he'd be able to run through that offensive line that they've got or that lack of line. And so I'm saying it's like part of the reason these guys do well as free agents is they go to teams with good lines and good offenses, and they're able to capitalize on that. And, Philly's making Saquon Barkley look like the second coming, and part of that is because he's got a much better line to run through than he ran with the Giants.
I'm not a big fan of the Cowboys, but do they have even 50% production from their running backs, what Henry had right now? Do they have 500 yards rushing from the running backs? I'm not including scrambles or anything from quarterbacks. So even if you get 50% of what you got out of Henry or what the Ravens are getting out of Henry, that's still probably better than what the Cowboys are getting. Cowboys
right now have a total of 656 rushing yards. That's what they have.
So we're talking 60% of what Henry has right now.
Yeah, because opponents playing Dallas have nearly double their rushing yards.
So
that's
I don't know.
That's right.
I'm sure they would figure out some way because, again, I mean, and I look back for all those years with the Saints, Mickey Loomis would end up the day after the day before the new year starts. He'd always be 75 or 80 million negative. The day after the new year starts, he's always signing a free agent. He figures out how to do it. You're telling me you can't move around $6 million.
By the way, I think you've miscalculated something here. Do you know how many rushing yards Derrick Henry has through 9 games?
I believe it's 1,080 yards.
1,052.
Or 1,070 yards.
He's got 1,052 yards rushing, which means, like we said a moment ago, okay, the Dallas Cowboys as a team have 656 yards rushing, which means, yes, you're right. They have 65% of Derrick Henry's rushing total. That is just a staggering number when you think about it. The fact that Derrick Henry has rushed for almost double the Cowboys' yards is insane.
Yeah. Wouldn't you 65% of what he's giving you right now? Because I'm sure 65% of what he's giving is better than what you were getting out of the Cowboys running back.
But I mean, here's the thing, okay? I think Rico Dowdle's had a good year. Like, he's averaging 4.5 yards a carry, but he's got 321 yards rushing. So what I'm trying to tell you is that even if Derrick Henry was with the Cowboys, he wouldn't have 1,000 yards on the ground because they throw the ball all the time. That's what Dak does. Derrick would probably have 600 yards rushing right now if he was with the Cowboys.
I would agree with that,
good.
and that's why I'm saying if you get the 600 yards from him, right? So that's 60% of his production that he's got right now.
Yeah.
On top of that, if you get another 100, 150 yards between the three other ones that they have on the roster right now, is Dalvin Cook, has anybody put out an APB to see if that guy's still alive? I know he started a game, but, I mean, has anybody really seen him?
Who's this?
Ezekiel
Zeke's
Elliott.
done.
You can't find him.
Zeke is such a head case. He missed 3 workouts last week and didn't even show up on Friday. So he's basically he's gone. Like, that was a waste of a contract. Zeke's got 149 yards rushing. He might as well not even be on the team anymore.
And then, like I said, Dalvin Cook was the other one they signed.
Yep.
And, they got him maybe 60 or 70 yards total this year?
20.
So you're talking 165, 170 yards between your two quote-unquote backups. So, yeah, if you would get 150 yards or 200 yards out of the three that are there, plus that 600-plus yards from Derrick Henry, that would look like a whole lot of a better situation.
Look, I am definitely agreeing with you in the sense that Derrick Henry is better than anything they have right now. I'm not going to argue that. I'm just saying that, like we talk about, I mean, we can't look at Derrick Henry's 1,000 yards in Baltimore and equate that with the Cowboys because it's such a different system. Derrick Henry is a perfect fit for the Ravens. I mean, you could not have a better running back if you tried than Derrick. He's perfect for them. And come playoff time with Baltimore, after what happened last year, I love the fact that they've got Derrick Henry right now. I think it's a great move for them. Perfect. But the Cowboys have so many issues. Like, I know running back is part of it, but, man, look, their second leading receiver right now is Jalen Tolbert. Then you got Jake Ferguson. They don't really have a dominant number two behind CeeDee Lamb. It's another issue right now. As bad as Dak has been, he's been sacked 21 times in 8 games. That's almost an average of 3 sacks a game. That's another problem. He hasn't played well. I mean, he's thrown 8 interceptions. That's been bad. Look, point is this, and I appreciate the phone call, Eddie. This team has so many issues. Oh, my God. You might as well, Adrian, I agree with you on one thing. You might as well just tank the rest of the season, get the best draft picks you can get, and hopefully rebuild through the draft.
One of the things that's sneaky terrible about the Cowboys is their secondary. Man, they're giving a big play after big play. The Darnell Mooney touchdown yesterday where he's wide open, walk-in touchdown. That's inexcusable if you're the Dallas secondary. And I thought they were good last year. They've taken 4 steps back. I get it. You lose Dan Quinn, but you replace him with Zimmer, who's an experienced defensive coordinator. And I think their defense has been a letdown despite the injuries they've faced.
505-6009. We are well past the bottom of the hour as we continue here on Sports Talk. Is Sebastian with us today?
Yes, he is.
Let's bring it back to Sebastian Perez Navarro. He is standing by with this Sports Center update. All right, Sebastian, thank you very much. By the way, apparently the Cowboys are considering moving Dak to IR. That would be kind of interesting. And they've already announced that Cooper Rush is their new quarterback. So what does that tell you about Trey Lance right now, guys? You know what? The Cowboys don't have any faith in Trey Lance. They watched him in the preseason. Didn't see enough to even give him the chance to be the backup quarterback right now.
Yeah, it's not like they paid a lot for Trey Lance. It's actually a reflection of that San Francisco draft that happened not too long ago, Steve, where they trade all the way up to 3. They draft Trey Lance at 3. He never plays really any relevant snaps for the 49ers because they have Jimmy Garoppolo. They have obviously Brock Purdy, who ends up being the eventual successor. And the Cowboys try to get Trey Lance as this backup option, but he can't even serve as a QB2 for Dallas. So maybe he's one-dimensional. Maybe it's the fact that he hasn't really played a lot of football in his professional life, but no Trey Lance for the Cowboys. I think that's a bit of a red flag right there.
I'm with you. Well, red flag in the sense that they don't believe he's the future.
Exactly,
Look,
yeah.
He's in the last year of his contract. And I'll tell you something else, Adrian. Do you realize this? If Lance played better during the preseason and looked great, maybe the Cowboys wouldn't have signed Dak to that 4-year, $240 million extension. Maybe they would have felt better about giving Lance, a third of that money and giving him the opportunity to roll with this team after this season.
Right. I mean, like, the upside for Trey Lance is somebody who's kind of like a Justin Fields who can throw but be cerebral and playmaking and show what he could do on the ground. But I don't think that they have the confidence in him. I don't know if it's the lack of development that he experienced or he didn't experience in San Francisco, but it just seems like the possibility of Trey Lance being a starting quarterback in this league is starting to fade.
505-6009 as we continue here on Sports Talk. Let's go next to one of our former interns. He's out in Lubbock. Michael Plundo wants to weigh in on the show right now at 39 past the hour. Michael, give us your take on this Cowboys situation.
It's a mess in Dallas right now. I mean, you've kind of put it all out there, Steve. I mean, horrible run defense. I mean, they're getting no production from their top backs, and Ezekiel Elliott and Dalvin Cook has been nowhere to be seen. I like Rico Dowdle, I will say. I like what I've seen from him, but they just haven't gotten much consistency as they want to out of him. Their offensive line isn't that good. Dak has been sacked, I think, 28 times, and on top of that, he's thrown 8 interceptions. And now you're going to lose him for a couple weeks, and he's a candidate for the IR. So I think it's just time to start talking about a top 5 pick here, Steve.
I mean, that could happen. Depending on how, Cooper Rush handles this team in the absence of Dak, yeah, you could be looking potentially at a top 5 pick before it's all said and done. We talked about their schedule, Michael. It was a very difficult schedule with who they're having to play. So, and it doesn't get any easier the next few weeks, that's for sure.
Right. They got a division rival this week in the Philadelphia Eagles, who are rolling right now. Saquon Barkley has been amazing for that offense. They did just, lose A.J. Brown, but A.J. Brown's MRI came back positive from what I read. So it looks like he won't be out long-term, which is good news for them. And their defense is playing good. Cooper DeJean, the rookie slot that they got, has been lights out for them, and it's just I don't like that matchup for Dallas. I think that game's going to be over by halftime, Steve.
Well, and let's put it this way. I mean, Jacksonville was driving in Philly with a chance to beat them on that final possession until Trevor Lawrence threw a bad pass to a running back in the end zone that was picked off to seal the win for the Eagles. And I thought the Eagles had that game in total control. Look, I don't feel great about Philadelphia. They're a weird team because they're 6-2, but they could easily be 4-4. The difference between the Eagles and the Cowboys, the Eagles find ways to win games, and the Cowboys have found ways to lose games. And to me, that's been the biggest thing right now. So I'm with you. Between the Cowboys and the Eagles this weekend, I absolutely like Philadelphia to win this matchup. I'd be surprised if Cooper Rush could take Dallas into this contest and win at home against the Eagles Sunday afternoon.
Absolutely, and I wonder if Trey Lance is going to get any opportunity at all. I mean, you saw Cooper Rush back in 2022 when Dak went down, and Cooper Rush went 5-1, an impressive start from a backup. But I wonder if Trey Lance is going to get any type of opportunity to show what he can do, and kind of an audition for next year to say, hey, I was a top 3 pick for a reason. So I think I deserve a chance on a quarterback needy team. Whether Dallas has him in their future plans, probably not, since they gave that big money to Dak. But I'm really curious to see if Trey Lance gets an opportunity down the line.
Michael, they played him the entire preseason against a bunch of backups, and he didn't look good. He did not look good at all. Like, my whole thing with Trey Lance is if he showed anything in the preseason when they went up against really the kind of the garbage in the NFL, those 3 games, then I'd be okay with it. But, I mean, his best performance was the last week against the Chargers when he threw for 323 yards in that one. But he had 5 picks. I mean, God, when you throw 5 interceptions in a preseason game against a Chargers team that doesn't even have starters in it, does that give you any confidence whatsoever to run Trey Lance out there right now if you're the Cowboys?
I mean, certainly not right now. I think Cooper Rush is your best option right now, given the experience that he has and the fact that he's shown you that he can win games. But again, Steve, I don't really know if I want to just go off of preseason for somebody. I mean, look at Kenny Pickett. I think that's a prime example off of that. Us Steeler fans thought he was going to be the franchise for this team. He was going to be the heir apparent to Ben. And look at what happened in the preseason. He was the best quarterback via PFF. He was out there making deep ball throws to George Pickens. The Steelers' offense looked like it was going to be one of the best in the league, and none of that happened, Steve. None of that even came close to happening. So I really think preseason isn't the best way to judge somebody, but, I mean, 5 interceptions is 5 interceptions.
True enough. Hey, appreciate the phone call, Michael. Always good to hear from you.
Good to hear from you, Steve.
All right. I don't disagree about the preseason comments, but when you're not going up against the number ones in the preseason, and Lance never went up against number ones pretty much the entire preseason, that's my thing is you gotta have strong showings against backups, against second stringers, third stringers, guys that aren't even going to make the roster, and he didn't. So when you see those 3 games as your body of work, you just don't feel comfortable trotting Trey Lance out there right now, at least when you know what Cooper Rush can bring you.
Yeah, you talk about body of work, Steve. Maybe that's a problem in the NFL with how we develop these quarterbacks. It doesn't even have to be Trey Lance. It could be other backups in the league who've kind of fizzled out or who are kind of shelved. Look at Mac Jones, the way he was done over with the Patriots, a really bad roster, and now he's just an afterthought over with Jacksonville. He's not going to find his way to a starting job anytime soon. You also talk about a guy like Bailey Zappi. I mean, he also had a spot on that Patriots roster, a terrible roster, albeit. But why don't those guys ever get a chance or a second chance, despite us just reacting to a handful or maybe a little bit more than a handful of starts by them? I think we have a developmental problem as far as quarterbacks go in the NFL.
Then you see a guy like Sam Darnold, who gets the opportunity to go into a winning San Francisco team as a backup and learn that system. And maybe sometimes there's more to say about guys that have failed with bad teams but get opportunities to groom themselves under good teams as backups, that once they've had that opportunity, they come around and you start to see better versions of themselves because they've been around successful winning teams rather than losers.
Yeah, I feel like we can't even judge like Bryce Young, despite how bad he's looked. He's another example of that. I mean, Darnold was in that horrible Carolina organization. He had no success over there. And then he moves over to San Francisco, learns behind a great offensive mind, obviously the Shanahan type of style over there. And then he goes over to the Vikings as he was able to sit back and learn, and now that's probably why he's having a lot of success right now. I think these quarterbacks need to learn a little bit and then be thrown into the mix. Of course, there's going to be the Caleb Williams of the world, the Jaden Daniels of the world who could step right in and learn as they go, but there's a lot of developmental stuff that needs to be done with these quarterbacks, especially when they're so young.
505-6009, our telephone number. We're live. We've gone well past the break here at Border City Alehouse. We'll come back. We'll wrap up hour 1. We'll tell you what you can win, and we'll stay with you till halftime of the Bucks Chiefs as we air the minor basketball team. Season opener tonight. Sol Ross in the house. We'll have it for you. 6:30. Countdown to tip-off with John Teicher, Steve Yellen. Courtside at the Haskins Center. Only on your home for UTEP Sports. 600 ESPN El Paso. Let's talk. Coming your way live from Border City Alehouse, 1506 Lee Trevino. We're along with Adrian Broadus and Sebastian Perez Novato. And who else is with us today, Adrian? I don't even know who's there.
That's it. It's just us two back here. Sal Montes, co-host of Minor Talk, on his way to the studios. Alberto Retta has been working all day. He was working on the KLAQ morning show. He was working out at the UTEP women's basketball game. He was out at the press conference with Scotty Walden today, and he'll be out watching some UTEP men's basketball later tonight and joining us for Minor Talk. So busy group out here, and it's only going to get busier next hour.
It is. By the way, I get the best of both worlds. I get to hang out at the Alehouse out here until 6:30. Then I get to watch a little Monday Night Football and see the Chiefs take on the Bucks. And then as soon as halftime is over and we've given away all of our great prizes, I'm heading out. Going to go to the Haskins Center and catch the second half of the Sol Ross game tonight.
That's awesome. I guess by that point, Steve, you'll get a chance to see UTEP going into their rotations and seeing all the different players out there. That's what I'm really looking for. People are asking, well, what do you expect week 1, game 1 against Sol Ross? I just expect variation tonight from UTEP men's basketball, all the different rotations that we could see this year. I want to see it tonight and see how they don't turn the ball over offensively and start to hit some shots from beyond the arc.
Well, I'm hoping people had a chance to watch the interview we did with, or listen to it on 600, but the interview we did with Coach Golding, thanks to Inspo Lens, that we promoted on Friday. Because if you saw that, you had a good, at least, primer about what to expect this season from his team. And I feel like, these games, these early games, like against Sol Ross, I mean, what are you looking for the most? We already know what to expect from the vets. I guess you want to see the newcomers and what they bring to the table. Guys like Barnes and Bynum and how they're going to work, and KJ. And more than anything, I think the one thing that Coach has really stressed is rebounding. Because if they struggle against teams like this rebounding the basketball, imagine what's going to happen when they start to play better quality competition.
Right. I think that's a really good point, too. I mean, the person in particular who I'm looking at in the rebounding category to be very effective this season, not just this game, but this entire season, Kevin Kalu. They're going to need him, the fourth-year senior, which is very rare in today's college basketball world, Steve, by the way. They're going to need him to be exceptionally good this year. They're going to take some shortcomings because they're going with that 4-guard lineup throughout most of these games. But that's why guys like Otis Frazier III and Kevin Kalu, it's going to be vital for them to rebound the basketball throughout all these games moving forward.
How much are we worried about the fact that UTEP really stuck with their core, their nucleus at the post, didn't add anybody, which means these guys just need to come through more than anything else?
Yeah, you're relying on Derek Hamilton to continue to try and get into shape, which is something that head coach Joe Golding told us during that preseason, I guess that episode, that edition last week. And also I would say that DeCannon Wickware, even though he's like a 6'6", 6'5" combo forward guard, you're going to need him to rebound the basketball. Same with Otis Frazier III. And then remember that first season, Steve, where they played guard heavy, Jamal Bieniemy, Keontae Kennedy, Sule Boom, so on and so forth. Those guys rebounded the basketball pretty well. I mean, those guys are sizable guards, but they were guards who loved and who always prided themselves in rebounding.
That's true, too. That is true, too. So, there's a lot of questions that still need to be answered. And I'm like you. I'm looking forward to seeing how this thing goes. Because you want to know something? I really don't know what to expect. Until we watch this team play night in, night out, Adrian, I feel like that's when we're going to get the true indication of this team. And it could be a while before we get that. It really could.
Well, it could be Saturday when we find out just what they're made of, right? Because Saturday, they already, Steve, play that game of the WAC Challenge on the road. It's Utah Valley. That's a top 150 team by KenPom. So, I mean, I'm not telling you that you're going to have to judge them accordingly based off that game, but that could be a barometer type of matchup right there for the Miners to just see how they stack up against another team who's got some good prowess to them. Utah Valley squad who wants to be pretty good in the WAC. Let's see where UTEP stacks up. They have to go on the road already this Saturday for that matchup.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. 505-6009. That is our telephone number as we continue. 505-6009 gets you right on in and through to the program. We'd love to hear from you here on Sports Talk on this Monday afternoon. In fact, we've got lines available. As far as our mobile app, that has been hot and heavy with comments since we started the show. In fact, let me jump into our mobile app, our 600 ESPN El Paso app, and giving you some comments from our listeners that have been chiming into the program today. All right. So, Sports Talk Carlos. Steve, do you ever get tired of talking about bad UTEP teams and bad Cowboys teams? You know, this is a great question from Sports Talk Carlos, because think about this. I took over for Taish in the summer of '97 which means it was right after the last Dallas Cowboys Super Bowl win. So I have not had any of those to talk about on this program. So that means now almost, 28 years worth of sports talk hosting with no Cowboys Super Bowl titles to talk about. And UTEP, I've had, let me think, since 97. So that means I had 04 and 05 in the NCAA tournament and 2010. So I've had 3 NCAA tournament teams in 27 years of doing sports talk for basketball. Football, I've had 2000, 2004, 2005, 2010, 2014, and then when did Dimmel go to a bowl? Was that
2021.
2021. So I've had 7. So think about this, Adrian. This is crazy. 7 UTEP football teams that have gone bowling since I've started Sports Talk as host, but only 3 UTEP basketball teams going to the NCAA tournament in that same amount of time.
That just tells you that for the big money-making sports right there, not to say they haven't been successful in other sports, because they have had success since 97 in other sports outside of football and men's basketball. That's not a string of consistent winning right there. And, you open up men's basketball, Steve, you got to start off with this season in 2025, it'll be 15 years since UTEP has been to the NCAA tournament. And for a school that loves basketball, for a school that prides itself in being a quote-unquote basketball school in a sense, that's something that has to be changed. And I think expectations are high this year. But at the pinnacle of those expectations are UTEP going and returning back to the NCAA tournament, back to the dance.
To answer the question that was asked, though, do I ever get tired of it? It kind of sucks. I'm not going to lie to you. I wish we were talking about winners more. It kind of bums you out when they're not winning. So I do get that comment from Sports Talk Carlos. I mean, what do you do? It's like, imagine if you're hosting a show in Cleveland and you had the occasional championships from when LeBron was with the Cavs, and the Guardians have had some good teams, but the Browns have been terrible all these years. And imagine if you're trying to talk Browns football every year since the 60s, and you haven't had one Super Bowl team to talk about. Not one. Not one. Since they created the game in 67. So, I mean, is it rough? Sure. How about in Dallas, where if you're a Cowboys fan and you talk Cowboys football, you haven't anything good to talk about in almost 30 years. So, yeah, it's not easy. Not easy at all. Anyway, Adrian, I hadn't really thought about it until Sports Talk Carlos kind of put it in perspective.
Yeah, I understand that one right there from Carlos. I mean, I've only seen, I've covered UTEP sports for 9 years. This is year 9, and I've only seen one bowl game. That's it. That's it in that whole span. So yeah, as far as covering, I mean, of course, I grew up as a fan, and I grew up here in El Paso as somebody who went to all these games. But as somebody who's been in the media actually covering it, not talking about a lot of winners here for men's basketball and football. As far as this year for Joe Golding, this year's squad, maybe it changes around for men's basketball. It's not going to change for Cowboys, that's for sure. I'm ready to write it off. I'm ready to say this season's over for the Cowboys. I'm at that point right now.
How old were you the last time UTEP men's basketball went to the NCAA tournament?
I was 14 years old, something like that. Yeah, 14 years old.
It'll be 15 years in March of next year.
Yeah,
the last time.
15 years. That's right.
So what, you're 28. So do the math. 28 minus 15, you would have been 13 years old. 13 and a half, right? 13 and a half.
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah.
But isn't that crazy to think that the last time you saw a UTEP men's basketball team go, and you're almost 30, the last time you saw a UTEP men's basketball team go to the NCAA tournament, you had just become a teenager.
Yeah, I remember the Butler game very well because in middle school they had like the roll-in TV that they brought in so everybody could watch that game right there. I remember that very, very clear. So, yes, I do.
It's pretty wild. Pretty wild. 5 Points guy. Hey, Steve, can you break this down for me, please? Since you guys are talking about the Cowboys, why does everybody say the main problem is Jerry Jones? All right. Well, here's why, 5 Points guy. Because even though Jerry writes the checks and tries to build the best teams he can build, he believes he is the right person to be the general manager and director of player personnel. So when it comes down to evaluations for players, he doesn't want a football guy that has been building winners to be his guy. He believes he's that guy. Even though he's like 83 years old, he still feels like he is the best person for the job to win. He doesn't want to just sit back in the owner's box and watch. He wants to be involved on a daily basis. He is the only owner in the game who's involved like this. Used to be Al Davis. Even Al's son has taken a step back now. So that's why Cowboys fans say the main problem is Jerry Jones. Pinky chimed in today. As a lifelong Cowboys fan, I was hoping for a good season, but not surprised by what is happening. Backups were not answers, needed a scat back, and didn't get on. Still a Cowboy fan. Didn't get one, he should say. Still a Cowboys fan. So he's not changing, but he's not surprised. So there's a few good ones regarding the first hour of the show today from Cowboys fans, Adrian.
You know, one of the other things about the Dallas Cowboys that's pretty interesting, you look at one of their biggest rivals in the Washington Commanders. It wasn't long ago when Dan Snyder was running that organization to the ground. In fact, it was just last year. But they had a changing in ownership. Steve, is it a coincidence that in year one, outside of Dan Snyder, they're having success? And could the Cowboys take a little bit of note right there to see when your owner doesn't meddle in everything, you might actually have some success in the future?
Yeah, that would have been smart. I mean, but what are you going to say? What are you going to say? So, man, I don't want this show to be depressing, Adrian. I don't want this show to be depressing. It's not the point, right? We don't want it to take that kind of a stance. But think about this. UTEP football's won one game. The Dallas Cowboys are 3-5. Fans can't have basketball season start quick enough here right now.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, you know, the good thing is El Paso's a Dodger city, so at least maybe they're at least a little happy, or some of them, a small section of El Pasoans are happy knowing that this is a Doyer town. But on the flip side, Steve, yeah, the football side of things has been, hard. Even if you're a 49er fan, are you really that excited about this season here in El Paso? It's been tough for a lot of football fans here in the Sun City. You know, you look 45 minutes, in Las Cruces. They're not having any success with their football team either. At least, they've obviously had a game under their belt, but still, they've had a lot of struggles this year as well at New Mexico State.
That's a good point, too. All right, 505-6009. That is our telephone number as we continue. 505-6009 get you in. If you want to talk about any of those topics today, we'd love to hear from you. A lot going on as we send it back to Charlie 1 for traffic. 18 past the hour, we're live, hanging with you. Border City Alehouse, 1506 Lee Trevino. The home of Sports Talk Live every Monday on 600 ESPN El Paso. Sports Talk, 23 past the hour as we continue with Sebastian Perez Nevado. He'll have Sports Center bottom of the hour. Adrian Broadus is back at 600 ESPN El Paso. I'm Steve Kaplowitz. Coming your way live for Sports Talk out here on location. It's Border City Alehouse, where we're going to be giving away a Super Bowl Champions DVD, the Blu-ray of the Chiefs, along with a Super Bowl Championship DVD from the Bucks, along with Chiefs and Bucks lanyards and Chiefs and Bucks bottle opener keychains, all courtesy of our friends at all that music and video collectors marketplace located out there at the Fountains of Farah, just below the Best Buy parking lot, where, hey, Black Friday is right around the corner. As you all know, it is a big, big day for special releases. They open early at 9 a.m. on Black Friday. But if you want to get all the best deals before Black Friday and get a jump on your shopping, they got it all. Whether it's vinyl, CDs, movies, posters, Pop Funko, other great items. Doesn't have to be just music. Could be anything. If it's pop culture, they've got it for you. All that music and video, and yes, they will evaluate your collections. We've got an I Love Bacon shirt to give away. I love this. It's a great shirt. If you love bacon, you're going to want that. We've got the City of El Paso Environmental Services Department. We've got an insulated mug to give away. These are great. It's about a 32-ounce insulated mug, and we'll be doing that away as well. We've also got some Budweiser koozies to give out here today at halftime of the game. 505-6009, 505-6009. The app has been great today. A lot of questions and comments from the app, including Poncho, RDH. You say you don't want the show to be depressing. Does that mean you're not talking about UTEP football today? Oh, look, Poncho, I mean, the question from SportsTalk Carlos was, do I ever get tired of talking about bad UTEP teams and bad Cowboys teams? The answer is no, because I don't get tired of doing my job. I love my job. I love the show. I love everything about it. And often, yeah, we're talking more bad than good around here. We really are. And UTEP football, Adrian, again, another game, another loss. Another loss that easily could have been a win. That's what makes it so frustrating. It's tough when you lose games that you know you deserve to lose. But it's harder to lose games when you know that you could have easily won the game and it wouldn't even have been that big a struggle. And that's kind of what this game against Middle Tennessee was like on Saturday.
Very disappointing in my perspective, Steve. I know that they have injuries. I know they have a freshman quarterback who's starting, which, by the way, first time for UTEP football starting a true freshman at quarterback since Mac Leftwich started in 2013. But despite all of that, Steve, they should have won that game on Saturday in this game against Middle Tennessee. They should have won against La Tech. They should have beat Southern Utah. And now these should have won games are starting to stack up. And to me, that's not a good thing, especially now we're trying to turn the page on the month of October, shift it over here to the final month of November. This Saturday is the final home game of the season. And Steve, you might think, oh, okay, well, this is a younger team. They're 1-7 right now at this point here, and they haven't had a lot of success. But I would say to those people right there, wait a second, this team is going to graduate 27 seniors. They are 1-8 right now on the season, and there's no guarantee they have another win on the season for the rest of the year, despite playing one of the worst teams in CUSA in Kennesaw this weekend, and despite playing New Mexico State to close out the year. That's just where UTEP is right now.
Yeah, you're right. Well, let's put it this way. I mean, if you watch that game, and I'm trying to get, like, your takeaways from that one, because I'm with you. In fact, I still believe that a lot of things could have been different in that game, but didn't happen. So, I mean, Pickles, at times, I just wish they'd give him a chance to throw the ball a little more. That's all. I mean, he didn't have any interceptions, but I still feel like they're so conservative with him. It's hard to win when you don't throw the ball downfield much.
That's a good point, too, Steve. I felt like the one drives that I really enjoyed for UTEP football, the couple drives, there was two drives I really liked in particular. The one drive where they finished off early on in the game and they kicked a field goal to tie the game 3-3. I like that drive because they started off by throwing the ball and getting JP Pickles in rhythm and kind of giving him some kind of momentum. The other drive I liked was the 4-play 51-yard drive or whatever it was where JP Pickles capped it off with his first rushing touchdown. They went fast on that drive, and they weren't afraid on that drive either. But a lot of these things are simple execution things. And even if they had the right guy, quote-unquote, at quarterback and not a true freshman, Steve, you still have to have the pass catchers who are going to haul in these passes. And I think drops were a bit of a thing, or just failed execution things offensively. They're one of the worst scoring offenses in college football, and they have one of the worst red zone offenses in college football as it stands right now.
They do. They do. And whenever they have the opportunity to try and, make good on certain plays, things just don't happen. Again, how many missed field goals? One?
2 of 3.
From Buzz?
Yeah, 1 missed field goal. He went 2 for 3.
Yeah, but it was a biggie because you needed those points. And he went wide left, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and it just hooked. It hooked, like, as soon as he hit it. And he was right in the middle of the field, too, Steve. Like, I get it's 41-yarder, and the game it's a high-pressure situation, but you got to make it if you're a scholarship kicker here in the month of November.
Bottom of the hour, if you want to talk about that game, we'd love to hear from you right now, 505-6009. I'll say this, again, with the team they've had this year, you know what's impressed me more than anything, Adrian? The crowds. I think the fans have been terrific this year. I really do. I mean, they're good. They're still showing up in larger numbers than I would expect to watch this team play. And I give them a lot of credit for that.
I do too. I mean, the fact that they had 14 and change on Saturday, I actually thought if you looked at the press box side, it looked pretty good. And they got loud. You know what I'll say as well, Steve? I thought it was just me, but at halftime I heard some boos. And it was a 10-10 game, for all fairness. It was 10-10 at halftime. It wasn't like it was a blowout or anything like that. It was a tie game. But there were boos coming from the stands. And a lot of people also said, yeah, I heard them as well. But I think fans were just upset of the lack of urgency, maybe even the lack of offense they saw in that first half.
Yeah, and yet they were tied at halftime. It was a bowl game at halftime. So, and that's the hard part too. You watch this team, and I actually thought that the best drive they had was the final drive of the game, didn't you?
I like the touchdown drive where J.P. Pickles scored on the rush, but on that drive in particular, the one you're saying, I like their 2-minute drill. I mean, I like the fact they moved it quick. Why can't you replicate those kind of drives more and more and try to just throw it around and see what J.P. Pickles can do passing it through the air?
What's the most frustrating part for you right now? The offense or the time management?
Oh, that's a great. I was going to say offense for sure. Well, it could be worse, but man, the time management. It's not like it. You know what? It is bad. It's gotten to a point where I think it's overthinking a little bit, Steve. I don't want to really speak too much on that, but I just want to think maybe it's a little bit of overthinking. But the timeout mismanagement to me is mind-boggling. You just got to be better in late game situations when you have a chance to tie the game, or maybe even you go for 2 and win it. Like, you got to be better in those final minutes and final moments.
Pancho also said, has anyone asked Scotty about once again giving up at the end of the first half instead of looking for a field goal? Was that mentioned today when he met the media?
No, they didn't ask about that one right there. No one asked about the fact that they just went into halftime. The problem that I saw was the fact that Middle Tennessee gets the ball out of the half. So what do you have to lose? Just chucking it with just over 30 seconds left to close out that half. They just got all the momentum on their side, Steve. They had the Dorian Hopkins interception right before halftime. So why not just try a couple chunk plays and see if you could get something out of it?
505-6009 as we send it back right now to Sebastian, who's standing by with this bottom of the hour Sports Center update.
Thank you, Steve. Let's get to the headlines. Steve, you said let's stop being negative, but just a reminder that Cowboys quarterback Dak Prescott is expected to miss several weeks, as according to ESPN sources. Coach Mike McCarthy and the Dallas Cowboys were prepared to say that Prescott would only miss Sunday's game against the Philadelphia Eagles with a right hamstring injury. Although a source told ESPN's Adam Schefter that Prescott is expected to miss several weeks. He is currently currently in the process of getting a second opinion, and once the information is finalized, the Cowboys could discuss the possibility of putting him on injured reserve. If they make that move, he would be out until December 9th against the Cincinnati Bengals. Currently, the immediate focus is on the Eagles with Cooper Rush as the starting quarterback. Moving on to baseball, Garrett Cole and the Yankees won't break up. They'll stay together on the original deal. Today, Garrett Cole decided to remain with the Yankees on the 4-year, $144 million contract he opted out of on Saturday. Originally, the only way Cole would remain a Yankee without reaching free agency was if the club voided his opt-out with a 1-year, $36 million extension to his contract, making it a 5-year, $180 million deal. The Yankees declined to do so. So, Garrett Cole stayed with them anyways, as if the opt-out was never put forth in the first place. A reminder, tonight on 600 ESPN El Paso, the UTEP Miners take on the Sul Ross State Lobos. Happening also Monday Night Football. The Chiefs take on the Bucks. With your Sports Center update, I'm Sebastian Perez Navarro.
Thank you, Sebastian. Appreciate that. Also, should mention this too. We will not be airing UTEP football Saturday afternoon. We're going to have the UTEP basketball game when they go up against Utah Valley State with Colin Deaver on the play-by-play for that one. So Deaves gets his first shot to call a UTEP basketball game while we'll have the football game on KLAQ. Interesting notes, guys, and this is something to think about. UTEP is 1-8. Kennesaw State is 1-7 and winless on the road. Adrian, does this all add up for UTEP to win their second game this season?
Yes, it does. I'm going to pick them again. I picked them last week. I don't feel foolish. I felt like UTEP should have won that game against Middle Tennessee. I'm going to pick them again this week against Kennesaw State. This is a team I still have, I have my expectations tempered, but I still believe that this team is better than that Kennesaw State team, who's been better as of late, Steve. I mean, they obviously have the big win against Liberty that helped get them a lot of national publicity on a Conference USA weeknight game. But still, I just don't see that team coming into town and beating this minor team. I got UTEP, and maybe that makes me foolish for picking them 1-8 UTEP team right now with possibly a true freshman at quarterback this Saturday.
Well, UTEP opens up a 3.5-point favorite in this one.
Right. I saw that. I saw they were favorites. They were favorites against Middle Tennessee, too.
And then they get a bye week, and their reward is to play Tennessee in Knoxville on Saturday, November 23rd, before finishing their season in Cruces against the Aggies.
Yeah, it tells you a lot, right? I mean, that Tennessee game is rough, Steve. Rough. I mean, that they're not only one of the best teams in the SEC, one of the best teams in the country right now. Tennessee is. They have a chance to play in the college football playoff when it's all said and done. And then New Mexico State that final week. Maybe you're playing for that week. Maybe that's a big week and it's hyped up, even though these teams don't have a lot to play for to wind up the season. Maybe that's one that you get up for as both a UTEP fan and maybe even for this UTEP team. They have some pride in closing out the season on the right foot.
Let's take a pair of calls before we go to break, starting with Chuco, who's first up at 505-6009. Chuco, what's going on, man? How are you?
Good afternoon. Good, guys. Hope you guys are doing well. And
you too,
I don't mean to change the subject, but I attended the women's basketball game today, and I'm excited at what I saw.
I had the opportunity to run into UTEP Athletic Director Jim Center along with Associate Athletic Director Julie Levesque after the game, and they said the same thing. I mean, Jim said to me that, you know what, he was really he liked what he had a chance to see and thought that even though the game was close and the Miners pulled out a 3-point win over Tarleton State, he feels pretty good about this women's basketball team here in year 2 for Keith Adams.
Yeah, we've got 5 returning players from last season, and then this season got some new players. And the one I really, really enjoyed watching was Portia Adams. I want people to take note of that one. She has got some spunk, and she's going to be, I think, that spark that team is going to be needing that maybe we didn't have last year. So, kudos to her. Kudos to Coach Adams. I really think she's going to do something good this year.
Well, Portia was one of 3 players who finished in double figures. In fact, she had 15 points in the game, also a 6 of 8 from the line. So, you're right. You need those players that can kind of be that newcomer to help fire you up, and hopefully, Portia is exactly that for UTEP.
And one last thing that I really, really wanted to compliment. Today was school day, I guess. A bunch of schools were in attendance, a bunch of students. And let me tell you, Steve, I don't think I've heard the dawn be as loud as it was today with a normal crowd. These kids injected so much into the game. I was proud of them. So if they can keep doing that for the other games, boy, I would highly encourage it. They were great.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Happy to hear it, Chuco. Thanks for the call. And, yeah, there's something positive to talk about. The UTEP women started off with a win, and hopefully in season number 2 we'll start to see some nice improvement from Keitha Adams and her squad. Good job there. All right, so from Chuco to Augustine, I don't expect the positive call vibe to continue with Augustine on the line, but who knows? Augustine, what's going on?
Hey, something about Keitha, Steve. There's no better coach than her in El Paso. Simple as that. She's going to get this team better, no doubt. And next year we'll go to we'll do the NCAAs with Keitha. That's a given. That
there
is
you
a
go.
given. And that's it for my positivity. But I called in because I started hearing Adrian Broadus taking UTEP again in this last game. And I just want to know what Adrian's thinking is on why he would pick UTEP over a team that is coming into its own at the last part of the year. Yeah, they beat Liberty. I mean, who's going to beat Liberty within Conference USA? They did it. So I just want to hear why. What's the reason? Is it the good coaching, the good play calling, or the all that experience at quarterback?
Well, my only reason is CUSA teams have really shown this year that winning on the road is much more difficult than it actually, has been in years past. So my only reason, this is a team who's FCS transitioning up to FBS. I'm talking about Kennesaw State, not, an Austin Peay coaching staff switching over to UTEP. This is Kennesaw coming to El Paso. And for that reason, I truly believe it's a senior day type of celebration. They get one of these games. This, despite they should have won both of these games. They should have won this past week against Middle Tennessee, and they should also have beat Kennesaw here on Saturday.
So I've got a question for you. How many people do you think are going to show up for the game, being the last game of the season? And really, that's going to be the big thing on laying the groundwork for next year. How many people are going to show up? They say 15,000, but that's 15,000 sold tickets. How many actually have showed up? That's the question.
Despite a terrible record and going into Saturday's game at 1-7, I felt like they had a decent crowd for the record that they had, Augustine. I hear what you're saying. And as far as doctoring up attendance, I think that this past week it felt like 14,000 or just around that. Despite all of that, I don't think they're going to have a great showing at all this Saturday. They haven't warranted a big crowd from their fans.
Yeah. And last thing, and thanks, Adrian, for setting me straight, but hey, Cowboy fan. That's it, guys. Have a wonderful day. And
appreciate the phone call. In the old days, long before I hosted this show, sometimes John Teicher would spend 5 minutes starting the program laughing because he was having fun with Cowboy losing them, big games and playoffs and other stuff. He would just do exactly like Augustine did, except he would actually laugh for 5 minutes. Those are back in the days when John and Duke would host the show. You know that?
Not much has changed, huh? Not much has changed.
Can you imagine 5 minutes of John Teicher laughing?
I would love it. I would love that. Let's bring it back. Let's throw it back. And bring Duke back on, too, to do it with them.
Duke would never laugh. Duke just thought it was funny that John would laugh. And then, maybe Duke would start laughing because John would laugh. It was pretty entertaining back in those days. But we're talking like mid-90s for Sports Talk. in that time. So, yeah, pretty crazy stuff. All right, 44 past the hour as we continue. Hey, speaking of John, he is 45 minutes away with Steve Yellen for UTEP Hoops as they get ready for the 2024-25 regular season starting tonight with Sol Ross State at the Dawn. Game tips off here at 7 o'clock. Looking forward to it, just like I'm looking forward to seeing all of you out here tonight at Border City Alehouse. 1506 Lee Trevino, hanging with you for Monday Night Football. Come down, the Chiefs and Bucks. It's all happening here with 600. He's getting in on the discussion. Adrian, I'm happy you set him straight. I am very happy that despite his evil laugh at the end of that call directed towards Cowboys fans, you at least had an answer for him regarding UTEP.
And it's hard to come up with answers right now for this UTEP football squad. I'll point out this, though, to those people. We had some callers on Minor Talk over the weekend. How does this impact recruiting? How is UTEP's 1-8 record going to negatively or, whatever, affect UTEP's recruiting class for the upcoming early signing day? Well, today, Steve, if you look on UTEP football Twitter, you'll see a lot of players across the class of 2025 announcing their commitment. Now, is this a good thing or a bad thing? That's still to be determined when we see things like rankings, when we see things like their official signings when it's all said and done in early December. But at least that tells you that there's still momentum for this new coaching class, recruiting and targeting some newcomers.
That's true. That is true. But that's another thing is when you look at this team, would you say that the best bright spots so far have been the youngsters and what they've contributed?
It's a bit of both, right? Like, I mean, if you're telling me who's the best player on defense, I'm still saying Dorian Hopkins, who's a senior, right? Like, he's their best player in my eyes. And maybe the number 2 is Corey Chapman, who's also going to be a graduating player as well. So I'd still say that the nice, surprises to me has been, yes, the true freshman players who have immediately made an impact. Kyron Duhan up front is playing a lot for this UTEP defensive line. Same with Jalen Jones. He's playing a lot of snaps. So I want to see those players continue to get reps and continue to develop within this group.
I think that's what's going to happen over these last 3 games. I really do. And hopefully the Miners can find a way to win one of them and at least have something else to build on heading into 2025. All right, we're 2 down. We've got 30 minutes left to go. So we'll get you right up till the start of the countdown for a tip-off show with John Teicher and Steve Yellen from the Don Haskins Center. In the meantime, come down and join us out here at Border City Alehouse, 1506 Lee Trevino, where we're hanging with you and getting ready for the Chiefs and the Bucks. Coming up right here at the Alehouse in about 15 minutes, 600 ESPN El Paso.